You are listening to the Marketing 32 Show with your host, Brett Allen.
Hi, Brett Allen here, host of the Marketing 32 Show, where I connect with leading dentists, dental influencers, and industry experts to uncover the latest and greatest in dentistry to help your practice grow and thrive. This episode, as always, is brought to you by our team here at Marketing 32. We're the only dental marketing team that I know of with a performance guarantee that if you're not growing, you don't pay us. We truly are invested in the practices we work with. We want to add value and do ethical marketing for the industry. So reach out to us at marketing32.com. We'll have a quick discovery call to see if we're a great fit to work together, and we'll go from there. Quick shout out to Rebecca Herring. She was recently on the show. We talked about how your unicorn team member is actually your practice's biggest vulnerability. We talked also about systems and growth. It's an awesome episode. I highly recommend you check it out. And super excited to have a new friend of mine on the show today, Ian McNickle. He is an experienced entrepreneur and is currently the co-founder and CEO of Icon Dental Partners, a uniquely developed multi-specialty DPO, dental partnership organization, with dozens of partner practices throughout the country. Icon is an Inc. magazine Best in Business Award winner in several different categories. Ian has been named a top CE leader and consultant by Dentistry Today for 5 consecutive years. He's written numerous articles for industry publications and published his first book, Mastering Practice Growth, the definitive guide to growing your dental practice or group. Ian has a BS in mechanical engineering from Washington State University, where he was also a graduate of the University Honors Program. In addition, he has an MBA from the University of Washington. Today, he joins us to share insights on the evolving dental landscape and what it takes to build thriving practices in today's market. Ian, welcome to the show. Excited to talk with you more.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brett. I'm excited to chat with you and see if we can share some information with folks.
Yeah, I was just captivated where we met recently at the Speakers Consulting Network event, the annual summit recently in Santa Barbara. That's how I saw you on stage, and I was like, I got to talk more with Ian to learn more about what he's doing at Icon and how your approach to partnerships with dentists is really a great alternative to what's historically been the DSO approach.
Yeah.
So excited to go deeper with you. Tell us more about how you got into dentistry. I know we were talking a bit back in the day, you were in dental marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so walk us through that story, how you got to what you're doing today, and then tell us more about Icon. I'm excited for everybody to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into the dental industry after a 10-year stint in the high tech. As you noted, I'd started my career as an engineer. For 10 years in the high tech industry, I really enjoyed it. I liked engineering and management positions, but I really had an itch I wanted to scratch just as an entrepreneur. And so kind of 2005-6 timeframe, I just quit my job cold turkey and just said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I didn't have a great plan. And looking back, I'm like, man, that was dumb. But when you're young and ambitious, you just go for it sometimes. And so, first company I built was with my roommate from grad school, and we just had a small little consulting firm for a few years in the Northwest part of the country. I live in Washington State, and he and I partnered up with another guy and started a marketing agency in 2009. And by 2011, we decided to focus exclusively on the dental industry. And so we built that company together for many years. And that company's still plugging along and doing just fine. One of my former clients, he's a general dentist, and he built a dental group, more of a traditional corporate DSO model. He built it back 2005 to 15 or so. And my marketing company, we used to service their firm. That's how we got to know each other. And so when he exited his group, he had doctors from around the country asking him, hey, could you kind of coach me how to do what you did and build a group? And so he started a consulting company, and he approached me and said, hey, would you be interested in being my partner? Because he knew I, was an entrepreneur, knew how to grow companies and I knew dentistry and stuff. And so we were a nice complementary skill set. So that was 2018. I started splitting my time from 2018 to 21. I started splitting my time between the marketing company and the group consulting company. And those are really interesting years, to learn a lot about the DSO models. And what I really came to kind of realize was the models and the DSOs are pretty flawed. Doctors don't typically like them very much. They're not necessarily better for patients. Team members don't like them a lot either. Dental office team members a lot of times. And so I was just kind of really surprised at how, it kind of reminded me of like the analogy I like to explain to people is like taxis, right? If you've ever taken a taxi, especially in the olden days, the customer experience is not good, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not comfortable. The drivers are typically pretty grumpy, because they're probably not having a fun job,
Yeah.
and but that dominates the industry. Like taxis were the option, right? And so anytime you have an incumbent in an industry where the customers are not happy, there's an opportunity for disruption and innovation. And
Yeah.
so to me, DSOs were like taxis. They're like, okay, they're the incumbents, but they're not necessarily providing a great service here. So how do we do this better? And so I spent a few years from 2021 to 22. We decided let's build our own group. And so I interviewed over 200 doctors, right, over an 18-month period, and I just asked them a bunch of questions like, what stresses you out about private practice? What would you like to delegate? What do you need help with? Um, and also, what might attract you to join a group? And so really just try to get an understanding of what exactly would doctors be looking for, and could we build something like that? But I also asked them, the flip side of that coin, which was, what horror stories have you heard about groups? I mean, if you've been in the dental industry very long, you've heard horror stories about people in DSOs, doctors getting
Yep.
screwed, this and that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so asking doctors lots and lots of questions helped me really understand at a deep level what they really were looking for and what they were not looking for, which is also equally important. And so, but I didn't just interview doctors. I spent a lot of time talking with investors, attorneys, accountants, investment bankers, and really trying to understand, from the doctor's perspective, okay, it's great to understand what they're looking for, but then also need to understand how to build something that is going to be legally compliant, that's going to be attractive for bankers to give us money, that's going to be attractive for investors to invest in us someday. There's a lot of stakeholders and a lot of audiences if you're going to do this right. And so it took a couple of years to put all that together. And once we did, we started recruiting doctors to join us. We officially launched as a DPO in 2024, and since that time we've grown, to nice little size, nice little growth rate, and we're plugging along. And but yeah, we're in 8 states right now. We're multi specialties. We have general dentists and specialists, and kind of modeled off of the Seattle Study Club model is kind of our goal. Like in each market, what we'd like to have is a handful of specialists, 10, 15 general dentists. They're all
Mhm.
collaborating clinically, they're referring each other, and they're all business partners, right? So that was the idea, is to build these multi-specialty clusters around metro areas around the country. And that's what we're endeavoring to do, but we do it in a way that's quite different for the doctor. So it's been a fun journey. It's been a lot of work, a lot of stress, but we're in a pretty good place now. So we're definitely in growth mode now.
Yeah. Tell us more about the approach that you guys have taken and what you learned from interviewing those 200 docs that it opened this opportunity to you. I remember on stage you were talking about um, how you were talking to investors or different groups in dentistry and they assumed you were just another DSO that was trying to come up. And
Right.
yet you helped spin it a little bit and show them, hey, this model is actually a way better approach to group practice. It's a win-win for everybody, the investors as well as the practice owners. Talk us through that more and pull back the curtain a little bit more around about Icon.
Yeah, absolutely. So um, when I was doing these interviews, right, and talking to doctors, one of the things that was really high on all of their lists was clinical autonomy, right? I want to be able to do which services I want to do, use the lab I want to use the supplies I want to use. I don't want somebody telling me what to do, how to do it, what to pick. If I have a quota, I got to do so many crowns a month, all that kind of stuff, right? And those are kind of common tactics in DSOs. Is legally you can't tell a non-clinical person can't tell a doctor what to do legally, but DSOs are pretty clever and structuring things in a way that significantly limits the doctor's choices in many cases, without naming names. And so what I one of the things I want to give benefit of the doubt to a lot of DSOs. I think the vast majority of them, when they started, very likely had good intentions. Hey, we want to be good for
Of course.
doctors. You want to be good for patients. I think they all started out that way. I don't know that to be fact, but
Hmm.
I suspect that that's probably
Well,
the
they
case.
saw a need for support
Yeah.
in the industry, administrative wise. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so I think that they had good intentions when they start, but then over time they become more corporate and less doctor friendly. And so why is that? And because we developed a business model that the doctors absolutely love our model, which is great, and that gives us benefit today. And we don't have investors; we're still privately held. And so, and I'll kind of explain our ownership structure and how that works. But so the idea was, okay, let's make this as great as we can for doctors, because really, what our belief is the number one problem that we have to solve to be successful as a company is we've got to have the ability to recruit and retain good doctors long term. Get them in, keep them happy, keep them long term, right? Whatever you got to do to keep the doctors happy. And so everything in our business model, we kind of ran through that filter. Is this better for doctors? Is this going to make them happy or not? And if it didn't make them happy, if it wasn't better for them, then we tossed it in the cash, in the trash bin, and focus on things that would be better for them. And so I'll give you a couple examples. Um, like when it comes to clinical autonomy, spent a lot of time working with the attorneys as we were designing the business model. And one of the questions I asked them, and these attorneys had done lots of kind of DSO deals in the past. And I was like, so how do these groups become more corporate over time? I know investors come in, they make it more corporate, but like specifically what is happening? Like, how is it happening? And they said, well, think about the mechanics of how these groups are designed. You've got a holding company at the top, and the holding company owns the assets. That's where the stock is located. That's where the cash flow from the practices flow up to the holding company. And so that's where the economic value resides. Then below the holding company, you've got an operating company. And the operating company typically would employ the support team. So example, at Icon, we have Icon Management Holdings as our holding company. You have Icon Dental Partners, which is a public brand. And so the Icon Dental Partners, that operating company employs me and my support team. And so we're the group that really provides all these services to the practices. So that's kind of the structure now, how the practices interact with the holding company and the support company. There's lots of different ways how you can structure those relationships. But what the attorneys taught me was, they said, look, when investors come in, they're going to invest at that holding company level, and they're going to make changes to that document, subject to your board's approval. And
Yep.
then once that document has been updated, that's the law of the land and everybody has to live by it. And so
Right.
anything that you do not want to have changed, as much as possible, pull it out of the holding company agreements and use what we call a decentralized legal structure. So what we did is all the things that define the doctor's controls, autonomies, everything that they really, really liked about their private practice, we pulled it out of the holding company agreements, and we made them individual agreements between each practice individually and our operating company individually. And so that way, no board can come in. Any change to the holding company agreements have no bearing on how the doctors interact with us, which is awesome, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was one of the many. We made a ton of innovations to our model that we looked at. Okay, how are DSOs doing it? And that's kind of a flaw in their design. Is
Mm.
they concentrate too much at the holdco level, and it makes it too easy for an investor to come in and change things that they're not going to like. So
Centralization of
we
power.
took
Yeah.
we took as much as we could possibly out of that holdco level and decentralized. Now the agreements are the same, between the practices, just for fair and consistency, right? So they're the same contracts and agreements and everything in terms, but they are not in a place that can be changed by some. Because you could be cynical. Like on our company, for example, I'm the only person on our board of directors who's not a doctor. Everybody else is a doctor. We did that on purpose because I wanted to put my money where my mouth is and show the doctors who partner with us, like, look, just trust Ian to do the right thing is not a great business model. I mean, I do the right thing, but they don't know me. They don't know that for sure. And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
how do we make sure doctors really have a seat at the table? Well, you give them most of the seats, right? And that's what we did. So you could be cynical and say, okay, well, yeah, Icon's set up great for doctors today, but what happens if an investor comes in and cuts a really sweetheart deal for all these doctors on the board, and they kind of screw everybody else over? And pardon my French there.
Right.
That's possible. And our doctors wouldn't do it. We have great doctors on our board, but they wouldn't do that. But you're a brand new doctor. You don't know them. You don't know me. How do you know, right? So the
Hmm.
fact that they're practicing doctors, they're part of the group. They're going to have to live with whatever they agree to, just like everybody else. That should give them some comfort. But what really gives them comfort is knowing that how we've structured this, even if an investor kind of try to come in and give them some kind of sweetheart deal, there's very little that they can impact at the board level because so
Right.
much has been decentralized, right?
Right.
So it
Right.
really not only makes it a great experience for our doctors who partner with us today, but also in the future, those things can't change, which is awesome. You know, Lots of things like that we did.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was super interesting when we were talking over lunch that that's how you structured it. What are some other things that you've learned working with doctors this way in the group? What's the benefit and what are some of those
Mhm.
value adds that you're seeing with Icon that are helping doctors unlock that next level of growth or whatever it is that they're wanting out of a group practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a handful of reasons that practices and doctors typically want to partner with us. Um, one of them would be to get help, right? I'm burned out. Doctors burned out. I'm like, ah, man, HR and recruiting and hygienists wanting $1 million a year and just all these things, right?
Yeah.
Are stressing them out. And so how I explain to doctors is think of us as a large extension of your non-clinical team. So when we partner with the practice, the doctor still owns their clinical entity in our business model. So their PLLC or S corp, whatever their entity is, that clinical entity, they still continue to fully 100% own that entity. And the entity owns the patient records and charts. So there's a nice firewall between clinical and non-clinical controls. What our team does is we come in and we say, hey, we're going to help with HR. We're going to run payroll. We're going to help with recruiting. We'll take over IT and cybersecurity and your marketing stuff. And we do all the financials and the bookkeeping and accounting and pay the bills, like all these different things, right? Help with leases and legal. And so as much of the non-clinical stuff as we can offload from the doctor and the team members, we do that to really free them up, right? So the delegation saves doctors time, reduces their stress. Now, the DSO model, when that happens, team members get real nervous. Oh boy, they're taking over a bunch of the accounting or bookkeeping or whatever. That means my job's about to go bye-bye. In our model, because the doctors have full control over their practices, we can't affect their hiring and firing. So our doctors have full control over clinical, first of all, like what services do they provide? What labs and supplies do they use? That's totally up to them. Their team employment, right? So hiring and firing their team members, setting their pay and benefits, setting their work schedules, 100% up to the doctors, exactly like private practice. Even the doctor's own work schedules. A lot of times when you go to work for a DSO as a doctor, they kind of give you a work schedule. Not so with Icon. With Icon, our doctors, again, fully control their work schedules. They want to take a month off, they can take a month off, but they're the owner of the practice, right? We're their business partner. So I tell the doctors all the time, like, look, I'm not your boss, I'm your business partner, right? So we control certain things on our side of the house. We're going to do the payroll and the banking and all these things that we have to do. As part of being on a platform, but they really, it looks, feels, and functions very, very much like a private practice with a few exceptions that we talk about when they join us, some stuff that we just have to standardize and centralize. But other than that, it's pretty a la carte. And so getting help is a big reason, just the power of a group, right? Negotiating power, better, pricing from supplies and
Right.
labs,
Yeah.
better reimbursements from insurance companies, more, I guess, access to technology. So we have a technology team and they just can vet all kinds of different technologies. When you're a private practice doctor, you don't have time to go out and research all the different softwares and technologies and things
Sure.
that are out there.
Yeah. There's so many.
There's so many, and the pace of new stuff coming out with AI is just crazy. And so our team can kind of analyze, vet, run pilots, and if something looks really, really good, then we can roll it out to the doctors and say, hey, we think you should use XYZ software because here's what it's going to help with. And they don't have to. Right? They could say, no, I don't want to. That's fine because again, they're largely running the ship. But we can say, well, we piloted this in 5 or 10 practices. Here's what's happening. Here's the results. We think they're really good. And if you're unsure about that, hey, why don't you pick up the phone and call Dr. Smith and talk to her about, her experience with using this or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because the doctors are all business partners, right? And so a lot of the benefit of this group has to do with collaboration, with reducing their stress and workload. There's also a financial component, right? Because we're relatively small. I mean, today we're only at 27 locations. We're pretty small compared to some of these Goliaths that are out there. But we're only been
Sure.
live a couple years, right? So 27 locations in a couple years, not
Not bad.
bad, but
Yeah.
I think we've got a pretty healthy growth rate in front of us over the coming years. But we're already big enough, even at our limited size now, to offer some pretty good negotiating power and some pretty beneficial pricing and stuff like that for these practices. So it's been a really good experience for the doctors because it's kind of, they get their cake and eat it too. They keep the best of what makes private practice enjoyable, the culture, the control, run it how you want to run it. Your branding stays the same, but they get the best of what the groups can offer, which is the purchasing power, the
Sure.
expertise, the centralization of services, the potential upside financially. Because if a group grows significantly over time and manages their debt properly, the doctors can have an extremely good financial outcome. Now, there's no guarantee of that, and there's lots of ways groups screw that up. They get way too much debt, they pay high interest rates, they pay too much cash up front. There's lots of things groups do to
To
uh,
fund the deals
screw up the
there.
financial
Yeah.
outcome in some cases. Not always. I mean, there's been lots of doctors who've made lots of money in DSOs and DPOs, but more recently with the higher interest rates after COVID, there hasn't been a lot of great outcomes. And so doctors are like, well, I don't know. I don't know if that stock's really going to go up like that. And really what it's a function of is, the growth rate of the group. So if you're 10 locations and you go from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40 to 50, that can be done in a couple, 2, 3 years, right? But if you're already 100 locations to go to 2 to 3 to 4 locations, that doesn't happen quickly, right? So the
Yeah.
growth rate naturally slows down as you get bigger. And so the return on the stock is just, it's going to be less and less the bigger the thing gets,
Yeah.
typically, right?
Right. Yeah, we were
If you're
talking about
these big boys over 1,000 locations, and there's half a dozen groups now, they're like 1,000 locations or more, their growth rate is pretty slow compared to a little guy like us, right? So the
right.
stock potential, like when people join us, and I don't want to play up the stock too much, but I just want doctors to understand when you join a group that's like below 50 locations, there's still pretty significant upside on the stock potential, right? If the group's
Right.
growing at a decent rate, managing their debt properly, et cetera, et cetera. The potential is there's a lot more upside potential in a group that's in that
Earlier on.
situation versus a
Yeah.
much bigger run. And that's true of any company, right? I tell this story sometimes, and it's a true story, and it's funny, but it kind of makes me cry. So I graduated from Washington State in 1995, bachelor's in mechanical engineering. One of my buddies graduated same year, degree in English, and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he lived in Seattle, so he went to work for some company that was selling books out of a warehouse. And you might guess who that company was. And so
Oh,
saw
wow.
him
Yeah.
8 or 9 years later, and he was retired. And
Yeah.
he was one of the early employees at Amazon, and he was just
That's
working in the
awesome.
warehouse. Then he got promoted into
Yeah.
management. And I saw him at a football game back in Pullman, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I'm retired." I'm like, "You're what? We're
You retired.
30. What are you talking about?" "Yeah,
Yeah.
I sold my stock." And I knew
Amazon.
that was insane, right? So he was one of the early employees at Amazon.
Sure.
So, like, you can go work at Amazon today, 30 years later since they
Sure.
launched, and you can still make a really good income, have a great retirement, make a bunch of money in the stock. Like, you'll still do well if you go work at Amazon today. But the opportunity was much, much
It
greater back in the 90s
Sure.
and early 2000s, right? And
Yep.
it's the same with any company, right? Same with my company, same with if you would have
Yep.
joined Heartland, back when they were 50 locations, well, now they're like 1,900 locations, right?
Yeah.
You rode that wave with them, and I've met doctors who rode that wave and made a ton of money working at Heartland
Yep.
on their stock, but that
What's
was
out
in the past, right? And so it's a function of, like,
Yeah.
how big are they, the growth rate, the debt, all that stuff. So I don't get too much
Yeah.
in the weeds. I try to explain to doctors at a high level how it works, but
Right.
I don't ever promise returns like, "Hey, we think it's gonna be pretty good." Can't
Well,
promise
it's gotta
guarantee it.
be a value add to make sense. Yeah,
Yes.
and like you said, there's a lot of great things about what you guys are doing that makes those who join your group, uh, add that value. Um,
Yeah. It's fun.
so do most of your practices, I guess in a DPO, they're joining the organization, they're staying in their practice, they're not exiting. I guess
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, most
Yeah,
of our doctors are very much mid-career. I would say 80% of our
right,
doctors are in their 40s and 50s, or maybe
right.
10% in their 30s, and maybe 10% in their 60s and 70s. So most of our doctors, yeah, they're planning to work 7, 10, 15 more years or whatever. And so we're not an exit play. Like, a lot of times a doctor will sell to a DSO. It's like the end of the career. Okay, I got
The exit, yeah,
a few years left. I'm going to sell to a DSO and get as much as I can. And then I'll just hold my nose and just, suck it up and deal with it and then leave is when
I
I can leave. And
I
that's a
recently
terrible
had
way to
Bob
end your
Spiel
career.
on the show, and we talked all about he does the podcast Just Say No to the DSO. He talked all about how these deals are structured with these clawbacks, and it's actually oftentimes way more profitable and better for the practice owner to just work 5 years and exit selling to another private dentist than to sell to the DSO. But
It can be. It totally
yeah,
depends on the structure, but you're right. I mean, there's
right,
earnouts, there's clawbacks, there's all kinds of
right,
tricky things that they put in those agreements, and we don't have those. We don't have earnouts, we don't have clawbacks like that. So it's a very fair and balanced kind of an approach. And so, but you're right. I mean, you definitely in some DSOs you would be better off staying in private practice, but in other
yeah,
cases you could make a lot more. It just really depends.
yeah,
It's very
yeah.
very deal specific.
Well, this has been fascinating. I mean, I've got a bunch more questions for you. Maybe we should do a part two, but
Sure.
we're about out of time. I always close the show with what's that golden nugget? What's that one thing, if we could help our listeners have this epiphany today, would have a ripple effect for them and a big impact for them? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that we see that generally drives the most performance growth over time is, and this is not rocket science, like, this is something that's pretty common knowledge, but a lot of times it isn't practiced. And it's, if you don't track something, you're not really going to improve it, right? And so
Mm,
what we encourage practices to do, and what we do with our practices also, is like, what are the key performance indicators, right? Those KPIs that you're trying to improve. And it could be lots of things. It could be, of course, revenue growth and profits and margins. It could be those things. It could be cutting costs, but it could be employee satisfaction. It could be, I want to I'm a doctor. I want to make as much money as I did last year, but work 20% fewer days. Okay, well, that's a great goal. So So set the goals, make a plan, and then have a consistent kind of an ongoing accountability group, whether it's other doctors you're working with, whether if you're part of a DPO like ours, our team obviously would work with our practices on a regular basis, weekly and monthly, to help them implement these things. But I would say if people are really looking to drive performance in their practice, figure out what those metrics are, track them, and then develop a plan to improve them. There's lots of great consultants and coaches out there who can help with those things. Or if you're part of a group like ours, of course, we provide that stuff in house. But you don't track it, you won't improve it.
Yeah, I love that. What you focus on grows, right? And this is why we started Marketing 32 and focused in on dentistry back in 2018. Was we saw a need, like you were talking about in the beginning. You saw a need in the market for a better group structure. We saw a need for better marketing in terms of what's tracked, what's actually driving revenue for the practice, and is the marketing company held accountable to the right leading metrics that are going to contribute to growth. I think there's a lot of great dental marketing companies, but there are also a lot of fluff companies out there that focus on different metrics that aren't really important to the practice, like how many engagement a post got, or how many followers you got, or what's your ranking, and all these different vanity metrics that are important for marketing, but are these really contributing to phone calls, bookings, and production, right? So and I've said this on the show before, we have a practice management integration that ties all of that together. So we see the full marketing equation from dollars spent to production. But yeah, I love that. What you focus on, it really matters. And are we focusing on the right things? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's what I see. And that's what any coach or consultant is going to help a practice do. So we do with our practices is we do a deep dive analysis and say, hey, doc, here's 8 or 10 things we think we could really help to move the needle, but what do you want us to focus on? So the doctor tells us, because we work for the doctor, right?
Yeah.
So you say, hey, what do you want us to focus on? And they set the priorities, and then that's what we work on. So it's a partnership.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Well, good deal. This has been fascinating, Ian. I know that you're a wealth of knowledge, and there's way more we could talk about that goes into the administrative side of practices, and especially from a group perspective. I'm sure there's way more we could glean from you, and I'd love to do a part 2 sometime. But thank you for coming on today. Thank you for sharing what you've shared, and I really appreciate it.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, Brett.
So I guess before we go, do you have a place where people can go if they want to get in touch with you, or if they are curious about joining Icon? Like, where should we send them?
Just go to our website, icondentalpartners.com. It's ICON, right? So icondentalpartners.com. There's a contact us button on there. There's a little form people can fill out. They can just email me directly if they want to. It's just Ian, IAN, at icondentalpartners.com. So yeah, I'm happy to chat with anybody if they have questions or just want to kick the tires and learn a bit more. Happy to chat. So appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. But again, thank you. This has been great, Ian. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks a lot.
All right, everybody. Until next time on the Marketing 32 Show, have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Take care.